The tragedy of the Titanic was very difficult for the people of England and Belfast, Ireland, where the Titanic was built. For many years, no one in Belfast talked about how they built the Titanic. But this changed over time, and today, people in the city are proud of their family members who helped build the great ship. There's a memorial to the men of Belfast who died on the ship outside the City Hall. And tour guide Susie Miller has her own very special family story.
I can remember, as a small child, my grandmother taking me to see the Titanic Memorial, which stands in the grounds of Belfast City Hall. And she pointed up at the name Thomas Miller on the plinth and told me that that was my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather worked here in Harland and Wolff in the shipyard which built Titanic, and he had helped to construct the engines for Titanic and its sister Olympic.
And Tommy Miller has a special place in the history of the Titanic.
He's unique. He's the only one of the crew who worked on the construction of Titanic for Harland and Wolff and then worked for White Star as one of the crew.
Like many people on the ship, Tommy was leaving Ireland to start a new life in America.
Before my great-grandfather left Belfast, he said his goodbyes to his two sons, and he gave each of them 2 new pennies dated 1912, and he told them not to spend those coins until the family was all together again.
Sadly, Tommy was one of the crew members who died. But his family never forgot him.
My grandfather kept those 2 pennies all of his life, and he passed them down through the family, and we still have them in the family today.
But why is the story of the Titanic still so famous after 100 years? Susie Miller thinks that there are 2 reasons that people will always be interested in the Titanic.
You've got the biggest ship in the world, with the richest people in the world and the poorest people in the world, sailing across the Atlantic, and on the maiden voyage, it hits this iceberg and it's a disaster. And within that bigger story, there are all these little threads of stories, individual stories about families and people who were heroes and people who were cowards and people who were villains. So you've got all those elements within it. So I think those 2 things combined give you a really good story.